Red Guardian's supposed to be a Russian character, right?
Da.
Does that look Russian?
Nope.
Stars? Red, white, and blue? What? He just looks like Bollywood Captain America.
Isn't worth it.
What's up, nerds? Let's jump right in. Red Guardian is a 3 energy, 3 power card that reads, on reveal, afflict the lowest power enemy card here with -2 power and remove its text. So overall impressions of Red Guardian, this is a good card with a really good effect, but it might suffer from a little bit of the US agent thing. In that video, I said US agent was very good in theory, but maybe not so much in practice. Now, I think Red Guardian definitely has a better shot at being a more played and more meta-relevant card than US Agent, but I do worry a little bit that at the end of the day, Red Guardian just doesn't make the cut in a bunch of decks. Now, on the plus side, this card stops a lot of shit in Marvel Snap. Almost every single deck will be annoyed by Red Guardian's effect. Destroy, it turns off all their destroy targets. Kitty Pryde Angela decks, it'll stop the Angelas or Kitty Pryde even. Discard, it'll stop Meek or Morbius. You can just go through the list on the meta and you'll see that Red Guardian is theoretically very powerful. All right, let's get into the mechanics of Red Guardian. So the first thing here is if there is a tie, it randomly chooses. That's usually the case for any card that specifies like a target, basically. Oh, it's the lowest power, the highest power. If there's a tie for anything, the game will just randomly choose one of the tied cards. The second point here, which I think is actually really good that it's like this, is that it's an on-reveal effect. So you can re-trigger Red Guardian. You can move him out of the lane and his afflict status still stays on that card that it messed with. But I think an on-reveal effect is, in the long run, probably more powerful than an ongoing effect, because ongoing effects can be turned off by more things than just a one-time on reveal afflict mechanism. And then the last point here is that he can be re-triggered. I just sort of mentioned this, the fact that he's on reveal, but you can Wong with this if you want. You can Odin it if you want, or just things like Kamar Taj. But the fact that he can be re-triggered, I think will come up a lot more than you probably realize. Aside from that, I don't think there's anything too complicated about this card. I mean, he reveals, he hits the lowest power card in the enemy's location and removes its text just like a Bleach or Zero would. I guess since we're on the topic of how he can be re-triggered and stuff like that, I will mention that off the top of my head, Shadow King, Luke Cage, and Cosmo are technically counters to it, but really the only one that stops him completely is Cosmo. All right, what are the good parts about Red Guardian? Well, the first point here, I just sort of covered, really, so we can just skip over it. Really. But it's that he's on reveal. I think that is an upside compared to ongoing because there's less counters to it and there's more ways to abuse that effect and there's less ways for the opponent to be able to get around the effect. All right, the second good point of Red Guardian is he's quite unique. There's not really anything in this game that does anything similar to Red Guardian. And when a card does something completely unique, there's no replacements for it, which makes him that much more valuable. And since there's nothing else that can copy his effect, it usually means that the effect itself will be more beneficial, more powerful, more impactful than he would be otherwise. And the third point here is that he answers previously unanswered cards. Now, I'm sure the first thing that comes to your mind is Dracula. That's never had a counter before. Now it does. Angela, except for Shadow Kinging Angela at the end of the game, there hasn't been really a way to stop Angela getting bigger and bigger. Now that Angela is back to her old form, a lot of decks are running it, that could prove very useful. But yeah, like I mentioned in the overall impressions, go look at untapped.gg and check out all the top meta contenders. And there's a lot of cards in almost all decks that previously didn't have answers or a way to compete with them that now do because of Red Guardian. And then the last point here is he has a high floor. So even if you don't hit something critical to the opponent's game plan, even if you're not absolutely ruining your opponent's day, the worst case scenario, Red Guardian is a 3-5. That's totally fine. And a 3-5 that actually removes the text from an opponent's card, that's a pretty high floor. So basically my point here is worst case scenario, Red Guardian is still an okay card. I don't think there's going to be any situations where Red Guardian is just like straight up like not worth playing. And that's pretty awesome. Most cards that like have really high ceilings also have really low floors. So sometimes they're amazing, sometimes they're absolute dog shit that just sit in your hand and you can't use them. Rogue is a good example of that. Like if Rogue doesn't have any good targets, then what the hell is the point of that card? But when she swipes like an Iron Man or a Devil Dino or a Miss Marvel, it's backbreaking for the opponent. Now the bad side about Red Guardian. The first point here I have is wasted effect potential. Now I know I just talked about how Red Guardian has a pretty high floor for his effect, but what I mean by this is that it's an on reveal. So really, realistically, you're going to be using it once in a game, and it's a 3-cost card. So what do? Do you hold on to the card until the last turn of the game? Do you just fire it off on turn 3 to stop cards like Angela and stuff? And that's what I mean by wasted effect potential. If you play it early and then they play a card like Iron Man or something, or Dracula, or just a better target for Red Guardian, and you'll play your Red Guardian out early and be like, yeah, I should have held on to it. You wasted its effect. I think that's going to be the trickiest part about playing this card, is knowing whether or not to just pull the trigger on him or wait and hope for a better target to come along. But yeah, the downside for Red Guardian, the first one here, is that I think like 50% of the time you play him, you're probably going to be like, I should have played it so early. The second bad part about Red Guardian is, what is he replacing? Now, outside of Surfer decks and Sarah Control decks, what are you taking out of your deck to put in Red Guardian? Is it your Shang-Chi? Is it your Rogue? Let's take a Loki deck, for example. Those decks usually only have 2 tech card slots. They have Rogue and Shang-Chi. Red Guardian is probably a pretty easy substitution for Rogue there, but other decks, let's say Annihilus decks. Usually Annihilus decks are only running Shang-Chi as a tech card. Do you really want to take out Shang-Chi for Red Guardian? I don't know. Once again, go look at the metagame list on untapped.gg and look through all those decks. If they even have a tech card in the list, it's usually 1 or 2, and you got to figure out what to take out for Red Guardian. I'm really not sure. Is his effect better than Shang-Chi? No, I don't think so. Shang-Chi's like always a 13 power swing, basically. So yeah, I think that's the downside of the card, is like just figuring out where he goes, really, other than the obvious homes. And that sort of relates to the last point here. What deck actually wants this? Maybe you could say just like a good cards pile, sort of like the move tempo stuff that's going around now. Does that want it? I don't know. They really only run Shang-Chi as a tech card. I mean, the list goes on and on. And this is sort of what I talked about in the overall impressions area, is like, yeah, he's good. Theoretically, is a really great effect that ruins a lot of cards for the opponent. But what deck are you placing him in? I said this multiple times now. There's really only 2 decks that I could see where they're like just happy playing Red Guardian all the time. But aside from that, where does he go? I don't know. I'm sure he will find a home, but that is a downside. All right, now this is where I think Red Guardian is actually going to be stellar, is in a Sarah Control list. Dude, Sarah Control now has so many options for screwing over what the opponent does. Check this list out. We have Blade. I'll just explain that. We have Blade to make Strong Guy easily a 9-power card. I think that's great and underrated right now. Sarah Control with Strong Guy is actually pretty decent. And then we have Goose paired with US Agent. That's just great location control, like passive location control, not something like Storm or whatever, but just making it awkward for your opponent to figure out where they want to play their cards. You have Scarlet Witch to change locations. You have Maximus for pure power. You have Rogue to steal ongoing effects. Red Guardian to get rid of just whatever the hell you want. You have Shang-Chi to bop the big things. I mean, just look at this deck. Goose, US Agent, Shang-Chi, Red Guardian, and Rogue all in the same deck. There is no archetype you are going to come across where you don't just completely ruin their day. And I think that's the best part about Red Guardian, is decks like Surfer and Sarah Control now have like a critical mass of cards where it's just like, it doesn't matter what you come against, you're fucking someone over. All right, on to my recommendation in the Spotlight caches. So he is 6K tokens. So do I recommend using 6K tokens for Red Guardian? No, I don't. No. I mean, he's a tech card. Even if he's a great tech card, he's still a tech card. So 6K tokens is a little steep of a price to pay for a tech card. Now, the easy recommendation here is using your keys and opening the spotlight caches for Red Guardian. Now, if you don't have High Evolutionary, open all 4. Just open all 4. You'll get like a probably pretty decent tech card with Red Guardian, and then you will get High Evolutionary, which is one of the best cards in the game. Easy purchase. Do it. Aside from that, Lady Deathstrike is whatever. There's some cute Lady Deathstrike decks going around right now, like Annihilus decks, where Lady Deathstrike is basically your backup Annihilus. So that's pretty cool, honestly. I think Lady Deathstrike is arguably better than it was, but it wasn't that great. But still, I like the new Lady Deathstrike. But when it's when you're thinking about whether or not you should actually spend resources to get Red Guardian or open the spotlight caches, I don't think you should really consider Lady Deathstrike at all into your equation. All right, to summarize Red Guardian and everything I just said, it's probably a very strong tech card, but I'm personally a little confused as to where he actually goes outside of 1 or 2 decks, namely Sarah decks. So I wouldn't really invest tokens into him. But either way, if you get him, you're probably going to be happy with him because he's got a low floor and he does ruin a lot of cards. So very interesting pickup this week. It's like a good tech card, which is a little weird. It's not going to blow anyone's mind, but it's definitely going to be worth it probably. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Yeah, that's it. Bye.